When you turn 101, people stop asking about your career. They stop asking about your accomplishments. They look at you with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief and ask the same question every time. How are you still here? Sometimes they smile and say, "You must have incredible genes." Other times they sigh and tell me, "Everyone in my family dies young. It's probably already decided." I used to believe that too. I remember standing at my father's funeral, staring at the ground, quietly calculating my own future. He was gone before 70. My older sister didn't make it much longer. For years, I carried an invisible expiration date in my mind. I told myself that whatever was written in my DNA would eventually catch up to me. Maybe you felt that way. Maybe you've leaned back comfortably because longevity runs in the family. Or maybe you felt defeated because it doesn't. But here's the truth I didn't understand at 60. DNA whispers. Habits speak louder. Science now tells us that genetics influence longevity, but they do not dictate it entirely. Twin studies, long-term aging research, and decades of observation show that daily patterns, sleep, movement, stress, connection, shape outcomes in ways we once underestimated. At 101, I am not here because I was lucky. I am here because I adjusted when I could have surrendered. So let me ask you gently, how much of your future have you already handed over to your genes? If this question touches something inside you, stay with me. And if you believe even a small part of your future is still in your hands, leave a quiet one below. It's not for me. It's a promise to yourself. Let me be clear about something. Genes do matter. There are certain genes that influence how our bodies regulate inflammation, how efficiently our cells repair damage, how we process fats, and how we respond to insulin. If longevity runs in your family, you may have inherited biological advantages, systems that are slightly more resilient, slightly more efficient, slightly more forgiving over time. That is real. That is science. But here is where the story becomes hopeful. Large twin studies, where identical siblings share the same DNA, show something remarkable. Genetics may account for only about 20 to 30% of the variation in human lifespan. The remaining majority is shaped by environment, daily behavior, stress exposure, social connection, sleep, and movement. In other words, even identical blueprints do not produce identical outcomes. I have met families where one sibling thrived into their 90s, while another struggled decades earlier despite sharing the same genetic code. So yes, DNA lays the foundation. It gives you a starting point. But it does not seal your fate. Think of it this way. Your genes build the frame of the house. How you live determines how well that house is maintained. DNA is the foundation. It is not the verdict. If DNA lays the foundation, daily habits decide how well the structure holds over time. After 60, the body becomes more sensitive to patterns, both helpful and harmful. Let's begin with sleep. Restorative sleep supports immune balance, regulates hormones, and strengthens memory consolidation. Research continues to show that chronic sleep deprivation is associated with higher levels of inflammation and disruptions in metabolic regulation. One restless night will not undo your health, but repeated short sleep over years can quietly strain the system. Then there is movement, not extreme workouts, not punishment, just steady, regular motion. Walking, light resistance exercises, stretching, these are powerful tools. Consistent physical activity is linked to lower risk of cardiovascular disease and slower functional decline. Maintaining muscle mass becomes especially important after 60 because muscle protects balance, mobility, and independence. Strength is not about appearance at this stage of life. It is about freedom. Nutrition still matters. A balanced eating pattern that supports heart and metabolic health provides the body with essential nutrients. It does not need to be flawless. In fact, consistency matters more than perfection. Sustainable habits outperform extreme diets. And finally, stress and connection. Chronic stress is associated with elevated cortisol levels, which over time may affect immune and metabolic systems. Social isolation has also been linked in research to higher mortality risk. Human connection is not sentimental. It is biological. After 60, daily habits are no longer small decisions. They are long-term investments. Here is where the science becomes deeply hopeful. There is a field called epigenetics that helps explain why identical genes do not always lead to identical outcomes. In simple terms, epigenetics studies how behaviors and environment can influence the way genes are expressed. Your DNA sequence may remain the same, but how certain genes are activated or silenced can shift over time. Think of your genes as a set of instructions stored in a vast library. Not every instruction is read at the same volume. Some are turned up, others are turned down. Lifestyle acts like a dimmer switch, adjusting the intensity of those instructions. Sleep patterns, physical activity, stress levels, and even social engagement can influence biological pathways linked to inflammation, metabolism, and cellular repair. Importantly, this responsiveness does not disappear after 60. Research shows that the body continues to adapt to positive behavioral changes well into older age. While no habit can rewrite your genetic code, consistent healthy choices can influence how that code is expressed in real time. That means improvement is still possible. The system is not frozen. Even later in life, small adjustments can send measurable signals through the body, supporting resilience, balance, and long-term well-being. Genes may load the blueprint, but behavior shapes the outcome. After 60, two people with the same DNA can walk very different paths. And sometimes, the one who refuses to surrender to genetics walks the farther road. So let me ask you something simple. If your habits stayed exactly the same for the next 10 years, where would they lead you? And if you adjusted just one thing, your sleep, your movement, your stress, how different might that path look? If this story made you reflect on your own choices, take a quiet second right now and leave a 1 in the comments. Not for me, for yourself. A small signal that you still believe your future is partly in your hands. And if you value conversations like this, grounded in science, spoken with experience, consider liking the video and supporting the channel. The more we share elderly wisdom, the more people realize it's never only about DNA. We still have influence. Even now, there are a few mistakes I see over and over again. The first is surrendering to genetics. I have heard people say, heart disease runs in my family, or everyone in my family loses their memory. And with that sentence, they quietly step back from responsibility. But blaming DNA entirely can become a convenient way to avoid difficult changes. Genetics may influence risk, but it does not remove agency. When we hand everything over to inheritance, we underestimate the power of daily behavior. The second mistake is believing that after 60, it is simply too late. I once thought that myself. But a human body does not stop adapting at a specific birthday. Muscles can still strengthen. Sleep patterns can still improve. Stress responses can still be regulated. Research consistently shows that positive changes later in life are still associated with meaningful health benefits. The third mistake is chasing extremes. Sudden, restrictive diets, intense exercise programs that cannot be maintained, radical routines built on fear. These approaches often lead to burnout rather than longevity. Sustainable habits may look modest, but they endure. And over years, endurance matters more than intensity. When you reach my age, you begin to see life less as fate and more as pattern. Longevity is not a single cause. It is an interaction. DNA provides tendencies, vulnerabilities, and strengths. But behavior shapes how those tendencies unfold over time. Science suggests that genetics may explain only part of the picture. The rest is written quietly, day by day, in ordinary choices. After 60, each morning is still a vote. Each night of sleep is a vote. Each walk, each calm conversation, each balanced meal is a vote. Not for perfection, not for immortality, but for resilience. You may not control the hand you were dealt, but you do influence how you play it. So let me leave you with a question. I wish someone had asked me at 60, if genes account for only 30% of your longevity, what are you doing with the other 70? Are your daily habits voting for the future you hope for, or drifting toward the future you fear? If this reflection stirred something in you, leave a quiet one in the comments. Let it be a personal commitment to one small change. And if conversations grounded in science and lived experience bring you value, consider liking the video and supporting the channel. Elderly wisdom is not about age. It is about awareness. And awareness can begin today.